Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Going Back. I am Thea and today I am joined by James and the one and only John Salako. He's here. How is it going, John? How's the family doing during the lockdown?
Yeah, do you know what? Everyone's great, thank you. We're all lucky, we're very fortunate, we're all stayed safe and crazy times. But do you know what? We've just adapted and tried to get on with it as best as we can. And it's been fine. You know, the world is, but for a lot of people, the world's caved in and a lot's happened. And, you can't thank the NHS and the key workers enough to just keep us going, and can't wait for football to start again and the world to get back to normal again. So it's just weird. It's just the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, no one really expected it to happen, but I guess we just have to live by it for now. Normality, it should hopefully resume soon with football coming back. But I want to get quickly into, before your time at Palace, in terms of your growing up, who was your inspiration growing up?
Do you know what? It was people like, first iconic guy, I suppose, was someone like Daley Thompson, like Michael Jordan. And then I started, obviously, when you start watching football, football-wise, it was funny enough, Stevie Coppell, Glenn Hoddle. I used to love Tony Galvin at Spurs. There were so many iconic, obviously Liverpool had the team, Kenny Dalglish, Kevin Keegan, that team, Graham Souness, and, they won everything. So it was kind of like a weird for me, sort of growing up, and I didn't really go to too many football. The first game I ever saw was a 14-year-old, went with school to Arsenal at Highbury. So I didn't watch a lot of football as a kid. And I remember being, I used to love my football. And the manager I had as an under-14, he's the one that wrote to Crystal Palace and said, listen, there's a kid here that you should come and watch. And that's why they sent a scout down. And, I got invited to a trial, and that's how I got into Crystal Palace. But I wouldn't have dared to dream or think about joining or being a professional footballer, because it was so different then. Now there's scouts everywhere, and the way it works is totally different.
John, you were saying that you didn't watch your first football match until you were 14. For me, that's quite late, and I'm quite intrigued to know, why it was so. And also, you said that you used to look up to Daley Thompson. So did football come to you at a later age than most football players? Because, I used to kick a ball at the age of 2 or 3, but I'm wondering whether it was one of those sports where it just came at a later age to you.
No, absolutely not. Obviously, my dad did his bachelor's in America, did his master's in England, then met my mum, and then took her to Nigeria. And they had 5 children, and unfortunately in 75 he died in a car accident. So there was my English white mum in Nigeria with 5 children, and she brought us all back in 79. So I grew up without a dad, and it's something that, it's one of those weird things. I just didn't experience that. It's the sort of thing you would do with your dad, really. Your dad would take you to football, you'd go and watch sport with him. So I just didn't have that. My mum was working 2 or 3 jobs to bring 5 kids up. What she did was amazing, really, because she grew up in a little village called Westerham in Kent, funny enough, where Winston Churchill's from, up the road, sort of Chartwell, Hever. And she didn't want us to be in London or in London just because of the problems and growing up. So we had a lovely upbringing, sort of Westerham, schooled in Sevenoaks. But, I had 2 older brothers, and we played football from sort of the morning till dusk, really, and sport was part of my life. They used to make me go in goal, which actually, funny enough, worked out really well, because I actually went in goal once at Selhurst when Nigel Martin got sent off against Wimbledon. So it came in handy, the fact that
I remember that one, actually.
My 2 older brothers used to shove me in goal, but I love football. I played football since I could walk, but I played I think when I was at school, I did cross country for Kent, I did athletics for Kent, I did football for Kent, did rugby for Kent, did cricket for Kent. I was, the archetypal sport Billy. So, but it was really weird. But what I meant was, we played sport when I was a kid. At 14, 15, I played for the school on a Saturday morning. I played for Westerham Men's on a Saturday afternoon. I played for Westerham Reds on a Sunday afternoon. And then in the summer, I played on Saturday and Sunday cricket all day, So our lives were just sport.
What was your I've made a moment, the moment where you finally realised that, wow, I'm playing professional football with the big boys? What would you describe as the moment you're like, wow, I'm actually here as a professional footballer?
Right, it kept changing slightly. So, you know, when I played in a semi-final at Villa Park against Liverpool, that was like, that's John Barnes, that's McMahon, that's Lawrenson, Hansen, Rush. You were like, yeah. Then you played in the final against Robson and Bruce and, you know, McClare and Wallace and you know, and then you thought the whole world's watching and you thought, wow, that's a moment. But for me, my top moment was Wembley, playing against a unified German side who won Italia 90. That was the dream. That was coming together of being on that coach, driving to Wembley with Shearer, with Walker, with Pearce, with Lineker, with Platt, and just going, yeah, this is the moment, you know, that is dreams of all dreams. And pulling on an England shirt at Wembley and representing your country was just, yeah, apart from your kids being born, that's, yeah, a sporting moment. My 196 not out for West Brom, first team. That was pretty impressive. But playing for England at Wembley was the ultimate.
Wow, that's an impressive cricket score.
It was, yeah, that was. I mean, yeah, as I say, you know, we that's what we did. You know, we played cricket, and I actually loved it. I played, yeah, Kent Schools cricket. But do you know what? It's funny because I had dinner. You know, one of my friends, Phil Tufnell, we had dinner with Michael Vaughan, and we were talking. And Michael Vaughan was at Aston Villa as a kid, and he got released as a kid, and he was heartbroken. He was driving home, and his mum was trying to console him. And do you know what? His mum said, "Oh, do you know what? Don't worry, Michael." He said, "You're better at cricket." And it's funny. His love was football, but he was better at cricket, and he went on to captain England in the Ashes and be one of the all-time great cricketers. But his true love was football. And I used to play cricket for Kent, and I can remember I was 12th man one day. I had to do all the scoring, and I was sat there. As much as I love cricket, I was just like, "Nah, I'm not. This is not for me." But luckily, I did actually know that I wasn't quite good enough. But at football, I was good. I never had any levels at football. Whenever I went up the levels, it always happened, and it was comfortable. Whereas cricket, when I played at a good level, I always knew kids were better than me. So it's really funny, the psychology of it.
Yeah. You're talking about a football level, how you're going up and realizing you're good, but you had the privilege. I mean, one of the most successful sides at Palace, playing with Wrighty and Brighty. We know how good they were on the pitch, but what impact did they have off the pitch in terms of for the squad and maybe to you as well?
It was an amazing time because obviously Steve Coppell was only 28 when he had to retire from injury and took over that Palace side. He signed me as a 16-year-old. And the first job he had was to change the culture that was there. You know, Jim Cannon had played 600, 700 games, absolute legend, but he was 35, 36. Mickey Droy, Steve Ketteridge, you know, the older players had to be, so that was his first job. And then to bring in some new players. So in came Andy Gray, in came Wrighty, Brighty, you know, Jeff Thomas, John Pemberton. You know, he started building that squad and building that team, which must have been a hell of a task for him, and he did that so well. But realistically, when Wrighty came, that was the beginning. He was like a 22-year-old. You know, he'd been on trial everywhere. He'd been trying. He was, you know, he just had so much energy and so much passion. He was fast, and you know, it's one of those. It's very difficult just to scout. You know, when players come and have 2 or 3 training sessions to go, right, I want to sign you. But he saw something in Wrighty, which is again another brilliant thing. And he signed Wrighty, and I was in the reserves at the time, young lad coming through, and Wrighty signed, and we were in the reserves together and training together. But just Wrighty had so much passion, he had so much enthusiasm, so much desire, and he was an absolute, well, you know, godsend. And we just worked. We worked so hard, and we ended up signing Nigel Martin as the first £1 million goalkeeper. But you know, the work ethic, the desire, the ambition was just through the roof. And that was a really fierce side. You know, we bought Eric Young and Andy Thorne from Wimbledon. And you know, it was just that team wanted to do so well. And we were incredibly fiercely ambitious and motivated. But, you know, Wrighty was just like a breath of fresh air, coming every morning like a big kid and just, right, let's get out there, you know, get on the balls and work.
Yeah. The real disappointing thing, of course, is when players leave. When you have a good team chemistry and then all of a sudden they leave. First Wright leaving, then Bright leaving. Did he have a feeling that the responsibility of you went up when they left to take over?
Yeah, it was a real strange time because obviously, you know, when it was the first game, Ian had left. And Ian leaving was one of those moments where it was when JFK was shot or Elvis died, or that was how it felt for me. It was like, oh my God, you know, just numb in shock. Right, he's gone. But, you know, I felt so good for him because I knew he was destined. He was destined for bigger things. And, you know, he'd said to Ron Nodes, you know, that you know, the season before we'd finished third in the top flight, third. And it was only them letting Liverpool back in after the high sauce ban that we won in Europe. But, you know, I remember Wrighty saying to Steve Coppell and Ron Nodes, look, if we buy 2 or 3 players, this team can do this again, you know, and they sort of didn't, you know, whether there wasn't the money or whatever the ambition was, we ended up not doing that. I remember Leeds finished 4th that same year and they bought Dorigo, Cantona and Rodney Wallace and they won it the year after. But off the back of that, Wrighty obviously said, look, you know, there's people who want me, I'm going. Arsenal came and paid $2.5 million for him. And, you know, he went and it was a weird feeling. And that was the beginning of the end, as you say, Wrighty went and number of players. But the first game I played, we signed Marco Gabbiadini, who was a top striker at Sunderland for 1.8 million. And in the first game I played with him at Selhurst, you know, playing against Leeds at Selhurst Park, you know, went up for that header, Mel Sterland at the far post, came down and my knee exploded. So it was a real crazy time because I have to say, I had a deal lined up and I was going to sit down next morning with Bari and I had a deal lined up to go to them. We were going to have a chat the next day. So it was a crazy time. So, you know, but, you know, sliding doors and whatever happened. So I ended up going through that and I got back in England, so I went again back to West Hollywood to have another operation. And then obviously it was that era where it was then the new team under Alan Smith of Southgate, Chris Armstrong, David White, Chris Coleman, Richard Shaw, Dean Gordon, Ricky Newman and, you know, Georgian Dart. And we, you know, Paul Williams, we had another wonderful side. We won the championship, we came up and that was the side that got to the semi-final again against United. Bastards. Lost at Villa Park. And, you know, it was crazy, really. And that was another fantastic side. And you know, that was a lovely and young, vibrant dressing room, totally different to the first one. But that was exciting to play in. But talking about, did I have, you know, the weight of experience, there was always that. There was always a feeling that you were one of the senior players but the injuries really changed that and took that away from me. But when I came back, I think hopefully I was that slightly older, more experienced player and part of that side. And then obviously, you know, by the time I was sort of 26, and I thought, you know, it's time for me to move on.
Yeah, you've mentioned the teams that you played with, some great teams. It seems like you've gone through different eras, the Wright and Bright area, then the post era of that. But in terms of games you played in some significant games as well. If you had to pick one, what would be your favourite Palace game that you've played in?
Oh, do you know what? It's difficult, but it's easy. I mean, to be fair, one of my special highlights, and it's very hard to describe. I think, you know, after I'd been out the second time, which was a nightmare. The first time I got injured, I was determined, look, I'm going to get back and I'm determined and it's all going to be fine. I'm very positive. And then the second time I got injured, it was really low point. And, you know, the first game I started was against Stoke at home at Selhurst and I scored a hat-trick. And that was a real massive high point for me. But I think the game of games that was the semi-final against Liverpool at Villa Park. For, you know, that was just, I think that was just, it was just too amazing. It was, you know, like we talk about football and we use superlatives and we talk about, you know, for me, football is such a great game because you can't write the script and you can never know what's going to happen and how things are going to go. And that was David versus Goliath. It was lowly Palace. No one knew Palace, you know, or it's no one knew Palace. And it didn't really household names I'm talking about. I mean, that Liverpool side had won 7 or 8 titles in the 80s. You know, we're playing them at the end of the 80s. And he's just so iconic in a sense where it was the changing of guard from Liverpool winning to Man United and Sir Alex Ferguson going on to achieve his legacy and be arguably the greatest manager ever in English football. So that game was so, you know, pivotal, so amazing. So, you know, it will always live. You watch it back, and we watched it not long ago, and it's just such an amazing game, the way it turned out.
Yeah, even to this day, even when you watch Palace now, it's when we talk about Istanbul, the 3-3 draw against Liverpool. It's one of them games where when you're the underdogs, it just means a lot to the team and to the fans and even to the players as well. And that's what makes football special. But let's go on to your coaching side for Palace. So you started off as under-16 coaching at Palace, done a bit of that before you became a first-team coach. So how did the first-team coach offer came about? Was it a surprise to you?
Yes, so did 13s, then 16s, then really I was speaking with Alan Pardew and he wanted me to come in and do a couple of days a week with the lads, work with Balassi, work with Zaha, you know, work with the forward players, you know, Fraser Campbell, Dwight Gale, you know, Connor Wickham and all those kind of younger players and forward players. Because I think Shola Amiobi, he'd offered that to Shola and Shola wanted to keep playing. So he said, look, if Shola doesn't take it, do you fancy doing it? And I was like, brilliant. You know, I'm doing my Sky stuff, you know, and this was a perfect progression for me and transition into working in the top flight of the game. So, you know, we went off to St George's Park. We did pre-season, went off to St George's Park. And at the end of St George's Park, you know, sort of Parts came to me and said, look, would you fancy doing this full time? And I said, absolutely. So it was kind of crazy. And, you know, we sort of worked something out. So I came in as first team coach under Keith Millen was assistant manager. And obviously Pards and the team there, Andy Woodman was goalkeeping coach. And you know, it was just a dream come true. So, you know, sort of went in. And, you know, it was a massive, you know, leap of faith from Alan's point of view, really, to bring me in, because obviously there wasn't a vast amount of experience. You know, I'd only coached, I hadn't done anything at first team level. So, you know, I sort of understood that. And obviously from Keith's point of view, and, you know, knowing that Alan had worked with a number of other people, he was vastly experienced. So, you know, that was a massive learning curve. Massive, you know, just day-to-day training, setting up sessions, coaching the boys, dealing with the boys, because the boys have changed so much since I was in the dressing room. It was, you know, working with Zaha, Balassi and all these kids every day, you know, the dressing room was a totally different place. You know, the money had gone through the roof. You know, they were different animals. You know, the way they were coached and what you could say to them. Even for me, you know, that old school culture of, you know, having a go at kids and really being quite firm with them. You know, I would be told, we don't do that anymore. You can't do that. You can't. And you got to tell them. You got to be strong. You got to be honest with them. You know, so, you know, going into that first team environment was it was so different and difficult. And really, I mean, the first half of the season was incredible. I can remember beating Stoke away 2-1. Chung Lee scored, and I think Connor Wickham scored. You know, and we were 5th in the league when we came out. Turn of the year. And then Connor got injured that game. Connor Wickham got a thigh, and I think Balassi got injured, and Chung Lee went off. His missus was having a baby in South Korea, so we lost those 3 players, and it was absolutely devastating. So we went into January, and we were a bit unlucky, but we weren't winning. And we went into February, we weren't winning. And but we were winning in the FA Cup, and then, you know, we were sort of sliding down the league table, and you're thinking, we under pressure here, what's going on? And you could feel that massive pressure, the weight. I think we won 5 or 6 games straight defeats. We went up to Man City and lost 5-0. And I mean, Man City were just off the charts. They were just brilliant. And it's funny because when you have a run of games, sometimes a run of games can just be you're going to play a run, and you've got to readjust and reset to go, right, okay, look, that's fine. You can easily lose 5 or 6 games in the Premier League, but what you've got to do is stay positive, stay focused, and stay believing that, you know, you've got games that are winnable against Southampton, against Bournemouth, against, you know, Watford. You can win those games. So the mindset in the Premier League is so important. And, you know, we kept winning in the cup, which was fantastic. But in the end, you know, Jason Puncheon scores a great goal against Norwich, relieves the pressure, and, you know, we stay up comfortably, and we get to another cup final against Man United. Bastard.
It's always them.
Which I was convinced we were going to get our revenge. This was our time. Van Gaal was a nightmare. He was leaving. They hated him. There was unrest. The team didn't want to know. You know, although they still had Rooney and Fellaini and Mata and a great team, I just thought it was our time to win that, and I thought it was written on, you know, our name was on the cup, and, you know, unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Punch scored, and then Mata equalises. Smalling gets sent off, and then Lingard with a wonderful strike, and, you know, they showed their class in the end, and, you know, that was disappointing. I think to lose as a player in the final to United, and to lose to United as a coach, as satisfying as it is to get to a cup final, it was a shame we didn't win it, because that would have been massive. So, you know, you finish the season in the Premier League having got to a cup final, and I totally understand it. You know, I had a good chat with Pards. We were looking at scouting the European Championships, and I was looking forward to the second year, and I'd learned so much, and I felt, you know, I've got so much more to learn and grow, and a great platform to kick on for. But, you know, Pards wanted to go in a different direction. He wanted to change it around. He wanted more experience. So I suppose in a nice way, you know, it's ruthless and it's cutthroat. So I was, you know, Pards sort of said, look, you know, I want to bring some more experienced people in. So in a way, in a nice way, I was sort of sacked. And, you know, some of the, you know, I spoke to Phil Alexander about, you know, doing other roles, but I wasn't convinced about what roles that was going to be and how it was going to work. And it really it wasn't what I was looking for at the time. So, you know, we decided amicably to say, look, thank you very much, but, you know, let's just leave it. So it's kind of like weird in a sense, where I think when I thought my chance had gone, it came, and you know, it went. So I'm very proud and honoured and loved that season and the relationship I've had. And, you know, Palace is family, Palace is home, and love the fans, love going back there, love, you know, I'll always will. And you know, it's very difficult because inside the game it is so cutthroat and ruthless, and, you know, that can't change because the fans are very demanding, and, you know, look, you know, they will always want more. And, you know, I've always understood that from a 16, 17, 18-year-old. If you perform, you're a hero. Do you know what? If you're not, you know, stepping up and, you know, you're not doing the business, then, you know, you will go and someone else will replace you. And that's just life at the top, and it's cutthroat. You know, we're gladiators, and we go in there and you've got to perform, you've got to put up. Otherwise, you're gone.
John, I believe the pinnacle of your career would have been obviously playing for England. And I've followed you throughout your career at Crystal Palace from a young age. And I recollect those days with, you know, under Steve Cockle, and it was a fantastic time. But I've got some good memories of you playing for England, but I don't really probably know as much about your time with England as I did as your time with Crystal Palace. Purely as a club fan, you tend not to see, you know, you're not watching as many games. So I've got some questions. What's your funniest memory when playing away with England?
Yeah, well, I was lucky because the first thing I did was go on the Australasia tour.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so it was incredible, really, being away. And just, I mean, Steve Harrison there, who went on to be a Palace coach, but just being, you know, to fly to Australia, I just remember how long that flight was, by the way. But getting there was just incredible. And to be around that calibre of players, we played for England, to be away was just, you know, it was incredible. And I think what I loved about that was just, you know, you just went and embraced it. And football is, you know, everyone was so lovely. You know, everyone was really nice. It was a really good squad. And, there wasn't massive pressure. We travelled with the press. The press were really nice. And really from my debut, and I can remember I came on as sub, and really from that first touch in that Olympic Stadium in Sydney was a magical touch for me. And, nice things were said, and, it sort of just went really nicely for me. So it was positive and encouraging. And I shared a room with Mark Walters, who's an absolute legend. I look at someone like Mark Walters, who's so gifted and such a talented player, and such a lovely lad. But you've got to have that mentality that I want to play and I'm going to play, and it drives you to work harder. And I think just going up that level just made me try and bounce on and push further and have more ambition and more belief in yourself of what you can achieve. But it's the stage you want to be on. So, and then obviously going on and play the 2 games in New Zealand were great. I started those 2 games, and obviously in Malaysia when Gary Lineker came and joined the tour from Japan, set up a couple for Gary. So, it's just magical. I didn't want it to end.
Who would you say was the most interesting roommate that you roommate with? And that can be for England or club.
Oh, no, I think, Tony Daly. I did room with Tony Daly a couple of times. And, do you know what people forget is that obviously everyone's quirky. They've got their own little routine of when they want to go to bed, how they sleep. Tony always used to ring his missus late at night. I wanted to get in bed about 10:30, and I wanted to sort of go to sleep about 11. By 11:30, I'm lights out. Tony would say, he'd be chatting to his missus at 12:30. We'd be like, seriously? Richard Shaw was a nightmare. He used to just go to sleep with the telly on. I used to get up at 3:00 in the morning, turn the telly off. I'm like, so, and in the end, I used to want to sleep. I wanted to room on my own because, whether it's Stan Collymore or, again, people want to be on their computers watching films. It's just, it is easier for you just, for me, I found I just wanted to be on my own so I could just have my own routine of, stretch, watch a bit of telly, 10:30, 11:00, bang. And to be honest, sometimes when I have a lie-in, you get lads who want to get up at the crack of dawn and go to breakfast, and they wake you up. And so, Tony was a great lad. But different people need different amounts of sleep. So
that's interesting. You should say that because I could relate to that. Even in my profession, you need a good night's sleep. Do players these days, do they still roommate together, or do they get their own room?
You have an option. Of, if you go away with England, sometimes with someone like Palace, they wouldn't give you the option because obviously cost. Nowadays, I would say the game's changed. The money side of it's changed. So you would get the option. If you want your own room, you can have your own room. And if you want to, so if you've got, like a lot of people think you're not that close to a lot of the players. So you might have a mate, like me and Richard Shaw. I shared with Richard all my life. Even when I moved to Coventry, Richard came and we shared. So, Richard was great. We knew each other inside out. We would always share. But apart from that, I got later on, I wanted to have my own room. So, as I say, sleep was just so important to me. I just always thought, get a good night's sleep. Then that was, very, very important to having a good performance.
So apart from, I think probably one of the biggest disappointments of your career is probably the injury that you had, which I can understand. But apart from that, what would you say was the sort of, the lowest point of your career maybe that didn't go so well for you?
Yeah, well, do you know what? The injuries were pivotal and were crucial. Really, it was my time. That was the time to shine. The European Championships in Sweden, the World Cup in America, 94. That was my time. So yeah, the injuries were massively, and after that, your body's struggling. So even when I went to Coventry, I think in that last year, sort of hamstrings and groins and little things. And, I I ended up signing for Kevin Keegan at Fulham. And that was sort of like a really quite low point for me because I went to, and I played 10 games and then my calf exploded. And I ended up sort of falling out with Keegan because they rushed me back, and then it went again. And I think Kevin sort of thought I was messing him around. So that was a difficult time. And then Kevin left to go to England. Paul Bracewell came in. I ended up moving to Charlton with Kirbishley. And at the time, Sean Newton and John Robinson. It was great management from Curbs, really, because he wanted me to go and sort of push those two, which he did. We ended up winning the championship coming up. But I didn't play much at Charlton, so that time was not a very happy time. And then I ended up going to Reading with Pardew and started bouncing back, and sort of went and had a lovely time at Reading. We got promoted, we got in the playoffs, and then obviously had a really good season at Brentford with Martin Allen. So yeah, there was that dip really of Fulham and Charlton where I didn't really play much. So
was it a cruciate ligament injury? One of your major injuries, wasn't it? Anterior cruciate ligament injury?
Yeah. So what would have happened? I mean, yeah, the cruciate exploded, but it did so much other damage to the knee. It probably almost needed 2 goes. So
that's right.
Almost like a year later, I had to go back. It stretched out. I had to go back to West Hollywood to have it done again. It was almost like it needed 2 goes to get it sorted. Yeah. And then thankfully, just going ahead, I just had to work so hard to kind of keep up and stand still. And the frustration of not having that youthful, young power, exuberance, my game was skill and power and speed. And, so although sort of made 600 games, it was a massive effort. And I think by the time I was sort of 35, 36, I was like, I am ready now. To call it a day, because to be honest with you, I was even taking anti-inflammatories to train, and the young lads are quicker, they're stronger, and I just used to think, no, this isn't, I can't keep doing this. As much as you love it, as much as you want to be part of it day in, day out, and that's really when I gave Sky a ring and just sort of said, I've done a lot of Sky stuff, because when you get injured at 20, 22, 23, you start thinking about life after football. And as I said, the second time round, I made a conscious effort. I did my coaching badges. At 24, I was a fully qualified coach. I started doing TV. I was, Sky, I said to Sky, look, I'm around if you need me. So many people would let them down, and Sky would give me a call. I'd say, look, I'd get in that studio and do that. So, you set yourself up, as you say, one door closes, you open another, and you got to start thinking a certain way.
So just a couple more questions from me. The hardest defender that you've come up against, when that can be either domestic or overseas, and the biggest influence on your career?
The toughest defenders, do you know what? There was so many good players. I don't know why there was so many good right backs. So, sort of going Lee Dixon, Brian Laws, Gary Charles was amazing. I can remember playing against Glenn Johnson as a youngster when I was older. He beat me up. But playing against people like Stuart Pearce and Julian Dix, the best player I played against was Gary Neville. Do you know what? Gary was quick. He was strong. He never said a word, but it stopped him going forward. Defensively, he was strong, and there just seemed to be an endless amount of really good right backs. But Lee Dixon and Gary Neville were the standouts for me. And whenever I had to go out and play on the right, the left backs were even tougher, I think, with Julian but Stuart Pearce was a godsend. When I was at England, by far the best fullback, the best guy I played with, because he said to me early on, he said in training, he said, by the way, John, he said, listen, I defend, you attack. Now get away from me. Not in those words, but it was brilliant. Every other fullback would be go double up, tuck in, come and help me out. Stuart just went,
fantastic for a winger like you, for get that confidence.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. When I went to England, I couldn't believe it. Stuart was like, listen, I'm all right. He didn't need help. He was like, you go and attack, you go and do that bit. And I was like, fair play, Stuart. Love you to bits.
Oh, he was a brilliant player. Psycho.
He was mate, just a proper, really quiet lad off the pitch. But, sort of, had time, because, we spent time with people like Gary Lineker, Stuart Pearce, and you get to know them, and Des Walker and those legendary players. And that was what the tour was great You could spend time with them, and you know, as a young lad, you just listen. You know, they tell stories, whether it's Platts, Steve Hodge, you know, just all the boys, you know, around David Hurst, and it was brilliant. You know, back in those days, you didn't say anything as a young lad. You just had to listen to them, and it changed. Even, you know, with Gazza, the best player I played with, you know, sort of going and playing cards with Ince, Merson, Gazza, you know, Shearer, and you know, just sit there and, you know, secretly you're thinking, oh my God, I'm sitting here playing cards with these legends. But you know, they were fierce. You know, they were fierce. They were warriors. They were proper winners. And you know, it was so fantastic to have that rub off on you and spend time with those guys. I mean, I saw Ince, Paul Gascoigne do in Manchester not long ago, and it was great to see Paul. And Paul's not changed, and you know, you understand his work ethic and his desire, his mental strength to have captained England and played for Inter Milan and go and play for Man United and Liverpool. You know, so you know, that's suppose, you know, going back to that, that was the one regret overall, is that would have loved to have won things, would have loved to have played a European Championship, a World Cup. That was the dream, you know. So as much as, look, you've got to look at the positive sides, and I'm grateful for everything I have, and your health is the most important thing, and the little mercies in life. And I was lucky enough to have a very nice career, but there's a little, you know, there's a little bit of you that goes to bed and think, God, wouldn't it be nice to have done that?
Thank you so much, John, for joining us today. As always, if you have enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave us a subscribe, and until next time, up the Palace.
Up the Palace. Thanks, guys.